Welcome back to Arise Prime Time, where we offer perspectives on the news and talking points of the day. I'm Charles Anyegolu. Now, you could say that since Bola Ahmed Tinubu announced that he would run for president and subsequently proceeded to run and win, albeit under disputed circumstances, Nigerian politics has become more restless, and the news, along with a string of controversies, have never stopped whirling around him like a dervish. There seems to be always something happening somewhere that he's got to fend off, all of it swirling contentiously around the perceived illegitimacy of his claim to have won the election fair and square. And as if those challenges weren't enough, there are those who would argue that President Tinubu has, by some of his inexplicable actions and claims, made his political life considerably harder. It certainly sounds like a checkered map, doesn't it? So where do things go from here? Well, for more of this, I'm joined now by our guest commentators. Dr. Constance Ikokwu is a journalist, political affairs commentator, and a Rise News analyst. And Baba Yusuf is a policy strategist, political commentator, and group CEO of the Global Investment and Trade Company. Thank you very much indeed to both of you for joining us.
Thank you.
And let me come to you, Dr. Ikokwu, first. Just looking at Nigerian politics, I mean, we know a lot has been happening over the last few days, but there's a lot more expected to happen in the next few days.
Definitely.
So we don't want to kind of beat that horse to death until we actually see something coming out of that Chicago debacle. But just looking at Nigerian politics from that point of view, and the need for reform and how Nigerians see that, I wonder if this Tinubu Chicago issue, even if Atiku Abubakar fails to achieve his aim of using it to unseat the president, whether it might provide a framework for how Nigerians view their politics and the corrections that need to be done to it, and the fact that it perhaps needs a new identity and perhaps a new way of manifesting itself.
Well, first of all, your introduction was apt. It has been a tumultuous 4 months for the president. You can actually describe it as a roller coaster. You know, everything has been thrown at him, from labor threatening strikes to the Chicago thing, and the aftermath of the fuel subsidy removal, and a lot of other things. Yes, it might be a framework, for changes to happen in society, but it depends again on the leaders. If President Tinubu is affirmed by the Supreme Court, do you see him as someone who would want to make any changes in that regard? And I think one of the reasons why all of this is gaining traction, or has gained traction within the country, is because with great power comes great responsibility. So Nigerians are looking and saying that the person who is our representative, the face of our country or even state or local government, needs to a large degree be of good character, needs to be a beacon of hope, of inspiration, of uprightness, of probity. All these things are critical, are key to governance in a country. So definitely we should be looking in this direction of what do we do, even if the Supreme Court affirms. Is there a way that we can rebuild and renew this society? Then secondly, there's also the angle of a lot of people still cannot believe that President Tinubu is sitting in Aso Rock. They believe that the man boldly blasted his way to the presidency, and he does not deserve it. They think that everything that
But a lot of people also believe that he does deserve
of course,
and that
yes.
he won.
Of course, he has critics, he
Right.
has supporters, depending on which side you are. But the critics are very vociferous, based on the luggages or the baggages that the man has. So this is mostly based on his political life thus far. So yes, his supporters and his team say that this is all a waste of time. People are chasing shadows. They're not going to find anything. But his opponents also say it is very important to establish the truth, which goes back to the framework. There must be truth. Our society has to be anchored on truth, on some standards, and on some levels, everybody needs to at least uphold certain values in society. So it's some work for us to do.
I absolutely agree with that analysis. And Baba Yusuf, Dr. Constance talked there about responsibilities. Has this also revealed the imbalance in Nigerian politics between rights and responsibilities? Because all we keep hearing is that the president has a right to privacy, etc. But we don't hear much about his responsibilities, particularly moral, as a leader in the context of what we're hearing out of Chicago. Is there an imbalance there?
There is absolutely an imbalance, and the case of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, if anything, brings to bear, and makes this an agenda that will be a critical success factor to the evolution of our polity. Correct, as Dr. Constance said, would the leader, however it turns out, catalyze the reforms that are required going forward? But that remains to be seen.
Well, it's not just dependent on him. There's a National Assembly.
But of course, you know how it is. We are running a presidential system. There should be. But for me, importantly, I'm not looking at catalyzation from the point of view of these political leaders. I'm looking at catalyzation from the point of view of the people. Nigeria is at the highest political awareness in the history in history, and I can tell you the political class were caught unawares. And I can tell you they are no longer sleeping with their two eyes closed, because an average Nigerian knows now the value he has, is the self-consciousness of our identity as a people, of what our rights are, and the demand for that responsibility you are talking about have been forced to the face of politicians, not just Mr. President. We saw the outcome of the National Assembly elections, how almost 70% of them couldn't find their way back to office. We saw what happened to some of these governors. It is a process, but the good thing about it is there has been a catalyzation, and I will stand to be corrected there, because 3, 4 years, 8 years ago, one wouldn't have thought this will become a critical issue, even post-election, of a sitting president, on the hot seat. I will say Mr. President is on hot seat. However you want to look at it, the matter is an issue in a U.S. court, and hands have been forced for depositions to be made today, which may precipitate some issues. Going forward, every politician down the radar will be conscious when signing those forms going forward, to say, if this can happen to a sitting president, what would happen to me?
Absolutely.
So no matter how marginal the change, we are going to inch our way out of this quagmire, of a process. But of course, critical will be an overhaul of our constitution. Critical will be an overhaul of our electoral reforms. As critical is the process itself moving forward, because we have fantastic laws and all that, but in execution and regulation, people drop the ball and we see a lot of corruption. But then the important thing is the people are speaking and the people are acting.
Very good points there. And just coming off the back of that, Dr. Ikokwu, he talked about the need for reforming the Nigerian constitution. But the constitution often is like a sort of detached thing, even though we're all guided by it. But beyond that, because we're talking about the ethics of office, is there perhaps a need for a handbook of Nigerian politics, which would underscore the do's and don'ts, a sort of Nigerian political epistemology, if you like?
That's a very interesting question. There are different ways to see this. Yes, the Constitution is important. Okay, about a handbook, a lot will depend, I think, on the people that lead us. A lot of the people that have what it takes and want to do good are not in politics. So you need a critical mass of the right kind of people to come into politics, and I think it gives us the confidence to continue to do the right thing. Well, a handbook, yes, it is by practice. Someone is the governor of a state, someone is the chairman of a local government, someone is the head of something. However, the process and the way they govern. Other people see it, younger people see it, and they follow.
And obviously, sorry to interrupt you, I mean, they have workshops and things at the beginning of their time, but what I'm talking about is a document that becomes something of a concordat between them and the public. That is public, because I mean, the public don't attend their workshops, but that everybody can get access to and say, this is a document and we hold you to this document.
Okay, so a kind of contract.
A concordat.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's possible. I mean, there are people that have been thinking about this whole political thing. I mean, there's a school of, I think a school of politics and policy currently in Abuja today. And one of the reasons why it was set up is because of what we're talking about. What is politics in Nigeria about? Who should go into politics? What should they be doing in politics? What should be the values? What should they be doing? All these things are what people have set up this school for. So yes, we could have a book, but beyond having that contract of what you should be doing when we're a political figure, I think that people still need to hold their leaders responsible, and they have to be very voice-of-verse about that. Like Baba, he said that a lot of people have begun to have more voice and to see that yes, our voices matter. You know, you don't have access to the traditional media to say what you want to say, but you have the social media, so you can do your investigation. Sometimes there's a lot of sensationalism going on there, but at least people are watching and listening. These so-called leaders know that this is important. These are tools through which people are voicing their opinions, and we better listen because the dynamics are changing, the country is changing, and what we're doing will not last for long. So I think this culminates eventually into a book. If we want to put it down officially, well and good. If we don't want to put it down officially, but I think we're going somewhere. Yeah,
but obviously such a thing would also, because I mean there's the leadership and the followership, and the leadership argue, and sometimes they do have a point, that the followership actually make them do things, you know, force them into doing things. But let me come to you, Baba Yusuf, just going away from that rather abstract discussion to the more concrete thing, which is the issue around Chicago. I mean, do you see an end point to this Tinubu academic record issue, or is it going to go on sort of inconclusively? In other words, there'll always be more questions to be raised and more assumptions to be made.
To be honest, this issue will be a sore point during the entire administration. For those that may not get what they believe is justice, and even for those that get what they believe is justice. What am I saying? Beyond the conversations about Chicago, we have already seen, you know, people also moving from there, looking at the potential of this playing out another way. It appears the Chicago case is open, this particular deposition will open a Pandora's box that will become subject of conversation even beyond the Supreme Court judgment, however it may turn out. I mean, the Constitution section 285 sub 7 says within 60 days from the day the judgment at the PEPC is declared, this matter should be closed. But then again, I don't reckon that other issues that will emanate that are begging answers and that are begging for answers and the answers are not coming will be sorted out in the next 60 days. So they will remain issues of conversation. And I believe they will, in a way, direct or drive how 2027 will play out for the ruling party and for other emerging leaders, because the fundamental questions now will start coming before even the processes begin and put people on that. But allow me to quickly go back to that handbook. The handbook is good, Charles, but then it goes back to overhauling the Constitution, because the book cannot be active and cannot be impactful unless it is embedded.
It is backed
in the Constitution by law.
Yeah.
All right. So that is the only way. And you see, already the Constitution as it is has critical provisions that the political class continue, abusing and refusing to act on. And for those responsible to ensure, whether it is the judiciary, whether it is the regulators within the executive or the National Assembly, all play aloof in a kind of conspiracy, of silence to allow things to play out in the interest of the vested interest. Now, this issue of political consciousness and demand for good governance by the people, build up to 2027, is, I think, what will help us change this. But back to your question, it will remain a sore thumb for us. But the good thing about it is it will precipitate more issues and guide political leaders going forward, that no matter who you are, Nigerians now know that they can ask questions and they will demand for those answers.
And you made a very good point there when you talked about the force of law backing something up, certainly the Constitution and all the rest of it, because, I mean, to buttress that point, I mean, we saw what happened with INEC when their own guidelines, I mean, they just sort of...
And nothing happened.
They rode roughshod over it, and that's the end. And we saw the petitions tribunal just sort of ignoring all that. But I mean, just listening to us having this chat, just the three of us inside a studio, I would imagine that all this is seriously dividing opinion in Nigeria and is provoking considerable divisive debate.
It is. I mean, when you listen to the NLC president, Ajero, he said that people were abusing him from both sides, whether you're on the president's side, whether you're on the other opposition. People feel like they have sold out. I mean, they have managed, I don't know if we're discussing that now, but I'll go on. They have managed to make some some points.
We can get into that. That's fine.
Scored some points. It looks like at every point they try to pounce on the president, and then the president is held, and then they come back to the negotiating table. And the way he talks about the whole process of back and forth, it's very laborious and requires considerable time and effort, and to get to an agreement. Apart from the things he has already said, he mentioned that they would visit the refineries, and that's what I want to zoom in on. It looks like we're dancing around the main problem. The main problem here is that we are importing fuel. And so the cost of it, of the importation and the exchange of the naira, is part of the reasons why it's beyond reach. So why are we not focusing on local production? What is so difficult that we cannot in 2023, 3 refineries, or even if the refineries are not working, get another one? Why can't we not produce locally?
Well, they could argue that they've got Dangote's refinery coming up.
It hasn't started because once you produce locally, then it crashes the price. It might not be as cheap as you would want, but to a large extent and to a large degree, it becomes much cheaper. And then it makes sense. So I think in the long term, all this 35,000 naira, 25,000 naira here, 50 million households, all those are temporary measures. So can the president and his team confirm that they're looking at the medium and the long term? That is actually the way to go. If not, in 2 months' time, in 6 months' time, we come back again with labor trying to cripple the economy.
Because prices will keep going up.
Exactly.
That's a very good point. And since she has tactfully moved us into the the issue of the strikes, and Joe Ajero, who was the president of the Nigeria Labour Congress, who was our first guest, a nationwide strike has been averted for now. But would you say that tensions remain between the labour unions and the government?
Well, tensions will remain because the labor unions remain pressure points. They remain on the other side trying to provide, whether deliberately or inadvertently, that control for government. Government will always like to have its way, and the labor unions will try to bring that, counterbalance to say, no, you need to look at us. So that will continue, especially because of the criticality of the time we are living in, Charles. The interventions, as impulsive and knee-jerk nature they are, must be frameworked in a more sustainable, modular way going forward. I look forward to Mr. President coming out with an action plan. I listened to the speech, the Independence Day speech. I noted, particularly with regards to the salaries increase 6 months. So we can say 6 months is a short-term intervention, but it's not holistic. There are still some critical gaps. There's a gaping silence with regards to the informal sector. Of course, I heard tangentially discussions about supporting the MSME, micro, small and medium scale enterprises, but it was just tangential. There were no details. And I think one of the things that will help the administration is the level of transparency, you know, to the dashboard level, to Nigerians, week on by the handlers of the president to tell us where they are. For example, the 15 million naira addition, the safety net, these are all cliches and blanket statements that really don't tell us how deep these things go. What kind of methodologies are you going to use to determine those? And 15 million out of over 200 million as an addition to what? Numbers have been issued, because we knew what happened to those initiatives of the previous administration. They are still opaque. There's a lot of opaqueness about that. So for government to get the buy-in of the people, to continue remaining patient, quote unquote, under this excruciating pain, albeit the top line government framework from national and subnational level are living large, for want of a better word. So we need to see that going forward. But the good thing is the pressure that NLC is applying is yielding the fruit. I like it, and I must commend the NLC because like the president of NLC mentioned, even the impact on not just the organized labor with the CNGs and all that. My advice is critical follow-ups to ensure these things are delivered, and to continue to communicate to Nigerians, not just the federal government, including the NLC, so that we understand that we are on the same page, so that also for the NLC, so for those that are saying you are in cahoots with government, they will actually know that there is no such thing.
Okay, well, we've got less than like 2 minutes. We've got about a minute and a half left, so you have the last word. And I think one of the things that I was happy to hear from Joe Ajero, the president of the NLC, is that this memorandum of understanding is tied to a court, and both Labour and the government would be bound by that sort of order. So if the government fails to keep its own side of the bargain, it would be a legal contravention, and this would free the Labour unions to take any action they deem fit.
I mean, also in the conversation, he did say that government has a woeful record of not keeping to promises. We all know that.
Yeah.
And they always come to the negotiating table at the last minute. The Labour Congress has a process. They talk about, you know, giving the announcement, trying to discuss with the government, giving a warning strike, 2 days, and then you go on the strike. So all those processes, the government, like he said, usually doesn't listen to them. And then when it comes to the last minute, they have to jump in there and get something done. Well, the government has to be prepared, you know, and give people a sense that it is ready for business, because the business of government is serious business, and that's what we want to see going forward.
Okay. On that note, thank you very much indeed. Dr. Constance Ikokwu is a journalist, political affairs commentator, and Arise News analyst, and Baba Yusuf is a policy strategist, political commentator, and group CEO of the Global Investment and Trade Company. Thank you very much indeed. That's it for this edition of Arise Prime Time. Join us again tomorrow. From me and the entire team here in Abuja, bye-bye, and thank you for watching.